Welcome back again. If you have just joined us, we welcome you. We're still right here on Pan African Morning, running on our last hour. Time really flies when you're having fun. Now let's look into other stories that we have to you. It is exactly 8 o'clock. In the latest round of legal battle between Please Call Me inventor Nkosana Makate and Vodacom, the telecoms giant has been ordered to hand over financial records related to the service. The North Gauteng High Court has on Monday gave Vodacom 21 days to hand over its records in order to determine how much it owed Makate. The former employee previously rejected an offer of 47 million in hope to achieve 20 billion settlement.
So
the figure
jumped for that 47 million.
for sure. The figure reflects a 5% share of an estimated of 205 billion in the revenue that Makate believes that he generated from the Please Call Me service, including an interest calculating at over 18-year-old period in 20-year battle. Makate approached the court seeking that Vodacom CEO Shamiel Joseph disclose the documents. The group replied to conclude that 47 million was amount due to him for the idea. Judge Jody Kolapen handed down the judgment that orders Vodacom to commence negotiation in good faith to determine a reasonable compensation payable to Makate. Vodacom is ordered to pay the cost of the action, including a cost of 2 counsel, if applicable, as well as the cost of an expert. Whoa, Balisa. And I was still saying that 47 million because he knows what he's worth. That's the thing. He wants 20 billion. He doesn't want...
Not millions, billions,
no.
No, that's an African son.
Exactly. Because he knows that Vodacom made a whole lot more than that. So if they are giving him 47 million, because they started with 4 million. Do you understand? They started offering him 4 million. He said no, and then I think they went to like 10 million. He said no, and then they kept on increasing. Now they said like, okay, 47 is all what is due to you. But he knows that they made over 200 billion rands out of that. So he wants 20 billion, which is just only 10% of that. I mean, that could be fair. Exactly. It could be fair for just an idea. You see how powerful ideas are. He's the one who created the idea of Please Call Me.
Please Call Me idea, yeah. You know, it takes us back, just, with our history, Susanda, that there's a whole lot of, people and African people that came up with inventions and, things, but then at the end of the day, they would not be credited.
Yes.
I mean, for example, we also know of a story of the lady who actually started the KFC, chicken, but then at a later stage, apparently the person that came up with the chicken was a black woman, an African-American woman, but then the guy KFC, the owner or that old man was the one that ended up, taking, all the glory and promoting KFC to be his invention. But apparently KFC was also invented by a black woman who decided to, fry that chicken. So those are the stories that we actually now are being faced with. Even now, this Makate guy who invented the Please Call Me and Vodacom, Nkosana, and then now Vodacom wants to take all the glory and stuff.
Maybe
like
I should actually emphasize that Nkosana is a Zulu guy from KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay, yeah, but otherwise, Sagbongela Putuami in Minangiti, Marai this fight,
yes,
and then
the fight must go on. Yes. Moving on, the provincial, rather provisional budget was tabled in Parliament and approved by all parties. Now we are looking into the story of Malawi now, looking into the first day of, the first week of the president, the new President Chakwera of Malawi, taking over the reins from Professor. Hey, I need to be before Mr. Mateza Kickman. So before, obviously he took over from Professor Peter Mutharika the reins, and now he is the one in charge. So he has put in a couple of things which we're actually going to look through into it right now. The provisional cabinet appointed in Malawi, Lazarus Chakwera appointed his lawyer Mordecai Mshisa, who assisted him with the elections case to be the Minister of Justice after public pressure about his age. He declined the position, unfortunately. And then the Minister of Finance, Mlusi Malusi reduces potential tax revenue by increasing the tax-free band by 100,000 kwacha, and says that the government will borrow about 209,000, or rather 209 billion kwacha, which is equivalent to about 5 billion rands. And the reports are also suggesting that the new president will be going for a 30-member cabinet, which is actually twice the size of the U.S. cabinet, which is 15, and bigger than the cabinet of China, which also has got 1.3 billion citizens. So Chakwera is paying back those who supporting him with, it's obviously people are asking questions that is he paying them back, people that have supported him with positions. But others, of course, are saying that the reason why he's, of course, opening up these opportunities, he believes that he needs more strength, he needs more workforce in his position so that he can, move the country forward. So also it is, we're looking at a snap was shared showing the former president, Professor Peter Mutharika, relaxing at his home with his wife, and Professor Gertrude Mutharika visited by their former running mate, the UDF president, Atupele Malusi. So you can see in there that, they're kind of, very much relaxed and chilled, and they're not worried about many of the things. And now maybe we're also going to take a look at some of the videos of when the new president Mutharika was actually coming into power and thanking the people of Malawi for their support. Take a look.
To a vast majority of my family, my friends, my ministry colleagues, they understand that I have not left ministry, but I have gone into a different world as a missionary to bring forth light where light is most needed in terms of leadership. The leadership that we talk about in the church, which is the leadership I have known all my life.
Yeah, I mean, also, Palisa, we're actually going to share with our viewers at home some parts of, Malawi, people celebrating, putting fireworks and, be happy of the new, what they call a new government that is in power. And also, I would like to share that clip that I spoke to you about, where this gentleman was doing vosho, voshoing his way, and I mean, he's quite a bit big for that job. And he's also older. I can't do what he was doing, I must say. Really, I cannot do that. But it's quite amazing. Have a look at this. Over and above that, of course, President Mutharika. Actually, we need to get used to that. I almost said President. No, not President Mutharika.
Even earlier on, you said Mutharika. I think you still hold holding on to the past president.
Yes. I need to rephrase. I need to rephrase. I must remember now. It's not President
Chikwera.
But
Mutharika is the old one.
Yes, President Chikwera. Also, he's actually one. A lot of people. I think in the near future, we must actually go deep into just trying to understand him and where he comes from, because a lot of people were wondering, like, why does he sound American? He sounds quite
the accent
very much American. We'll
yeah.
actually get a bit of history on that. So take a listen to this as well.
To stand before you as your president today is an honor. The dream for all of us together to be the ones who enjoy the riches of Malawi's soil, to be the ones who make the products of our industries, to be the ones who harvest the bounties of our fields, to be the ones who are served by her taxes, and to be the ones who raise the skylines of our cities. Dr. Chilima and I accept this challenge and task. With your help, we will restore a new generation's faith in the possibility of having a government that serves.
Of course, it hadn't been a very easy one. We can see all the celebrations and whatsoever that is happening in Malawi. We must not actually turn a blind eye, Palisa, over the fact that it's a celebration that did not come easy for some of the people. Some of them have been killed, and some were in hospitals, and some of them were severely injured. Maybe to show a less gruesome video of a gentleman being beaten by the soldiers in Malawi. It was alleged that he was disrupting the voting. Meanwhile, the now opposition, of course, were saying that they were not, he was not, he wasn't disrupting, but rather the people, or maybe that guy was one of the people that were supposed to be observing, because the observers were not allowed to be in the space. Take a look.
So he was fighting with the observers? Or
Yes, Palisa, you had a question, sorry, before we went on to the break.
So the guy was actually, an observer, or he was fighting with the observers? Because I see he's very
So it is believed that in many parts, obviously not everywhere, of course, to be clear on that, but in some parts of Malawi, some observers, election observers, were not allowed to come in. They were prohibited from going into those voting stations to go and, check and evaluate, obviously, the voters and count or be part of the counting. And also some members of the party, of course, led by former President Mutharika, were not allowed, because you know that when they are counting the votes, they need to be, you need to have all people. Like if you have got, like in South Africa, you will have like 10 or 15 different type of parties. Each and every party needs to have a representative from their party to be present, to also be part of the observation during the elections, but unfortunately, or the counting of the vote, but unfortunately, it is reported that some of the party people were not actually allowed to go in, and which is why the president, or the former president, is actually Professor Mutharika, saying that he believes that this is the worst elections in the history of Malawi.
Because I also heard that I think there were about 6 million and something people voted, but then when they counted the votes, they came up to about 9 million or so. So but that's social media.
Those are other allegations. But you know what? Anyway, in Zulu we say that asikho isikhathi sokukhalela amanzi achithekile. Once the water has been spilled, it has been spilled. You can't pick it up. So we just have in English they say no need to cry over spilled milk. Yes. So we might as well just go on with life and see what's going to happen. But as we said earlier, Galaxy Universal Network wishes President Chikwera all the best in his office, and we hope that he will be able to continue running the country at the best interest of Malawian people. This is what we need to see. We need to see a different one. And there's somewhere, maybe before we go on break, there's somewhere where he says that he is wanting to make sure that for him to be in power is to make sure that all the dreams of Malawian people do come true. So really, we're looking forward to that. We are yet to see, or what he's going to do, and yet to see what change is going to bring into the country. And again, he's probably aware that he's got big shoes to fill in, and definitely he has a lot to do, because people of Malawi, they really, really need that type of change that they are talking about. It's one of those things. But right now, we'll take a very short break. When we're coming back, we've got our guest with us right here at the studio to be with us during this show. So please do not go away.
The power to defeat coronavirus is in our hands. Play your part by following these 5 basic precautions. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water or sanitizer for at least 20 seconds. Maintain a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters from people around you. Wear a cloth mask at all times when in public. Always cough or sneeze into your elbow or tissue. If you're an employer, screen your employees daily for symptoms of COVID-19, and where appropriate, refer for testing. Working together, we can beat the coronavirus. A message from government.
Challenge your ordinary. Experience the extraordinary.
Not only the government, the municipality has had no plan.
Now, I believe that my peace is my most valuable asset.
Absolutely beautiful!
This is exactly what I was looking for!
DJ Khaled!
It is a day to celebrate.
We're ready for action.
I like it when it's nice and soft.
Yeah, that is nice.
How was it like growing up in Nigeria? Yes, sir, you know what it is.
Feeling is there that, you're doing something special.
Stop being so dramatic, Mira.
You should just be what you want to be.
Experience the extraordinary with StarSat. Experience the extraordinary.
I like you, girl, in particular.
Yeah, you got that young.
Challenge your ordinary. Experience the extraordinary with StarSat.
Welcome back again. If you have just joined us, we welcome you. We're still right here on Pan-African Morning. We will continue with our stories. The branches on trees around Kenya's northern town of Lodwar have been stripped bare by leaves bending downwards under the weight of, voracious young locust. Numbers of locusts exploded in the East Africa and Red Sea region in late 2019, exacerbated by atypical weather patterns amplified by climate change. Swarms of insects flew west from Yemen and this year reached Kenya, Somalia, and as well as Ethiopia. The new generation has hatched in Turana, Kenya's poorest region. The young locusts are eating everything in sight, and when their wings mature, their swarms will be able to travel up to 130 kilometers per day. The hatchings have occurred as crops are planted in a region where 20 million people struggle for food. Kirura fears that the swarms will spread quickly and said that the teams are working frantically to spray them with insecticide before it becomes airborne. Have a look.
It's planting season in Kenya's Turkana region. But instead of growing, farmers like Victor Juma are seeing their crops destroyed by a new swarm of locusts.
In the entire farm, if you go around, the farmers go around, or anyone can go around, you'll find that almost all the tomatoes have been destroyed in this shape.
The number of locusts in East Africa exploded in late 2019, exacerbated by unusual weather patterns that have been amplified by climate change. But this generation has hatched in Kenya's poorest region, and the young locusts are eating everything in sight.
They destroy our maize, poultry, so it gives us a hard time.
Turkana is a vast, dry scrubland in northwest Kenya that borders Uganda, South Sudan and Ethiopia. Daniel Kirura, head of the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization in Turkana, where 20 million people were already struggling for food, says the locusts are destabilizing an already bad situation. But he also warns that within a week, wings could mature, meaning they'll be able to travel up to 80 miles a day.
Our prayer is that we try to arrest that, because they can go and cause problems in other countries and other regions. So our wish is to control them before they leave Turkana County.
He says teams are working frantically to spray the locusts with insecticide before they become airborne, while the farmers use tin drums to scare the locusts away from their dwindling crops.
Kenyan Tourism Minister Nanich Balala said that tourism sector has lost almost half of its expected revenue and may not recover until next summer. Balala said that the second half was as good as zero, stating that the tourism will pick up with only 30% of revenue. Kenya attracts as opposed to its competitor. Kenyan tourism industry has lost up to 80 billion shillings since the outbreak of COVID-19. Tourism Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala has said. Tourism Minister said that this during the launch of the National Tourism Crisis Report yesterday at Kenyatta International Convention Center, where it emerged that about 120 million tourism jobs are at risk globally after the international flights were banned. In Kenya, about 1.6 million jobs are at risk, with the industry having lost about 60 to 80% of the sales owing to COVID-19. Whereas bed nights recovered by domestic tourism, tourists in 2018 stood at about 4.6 million, and the international tourism at about 4 million. The industry is recognizing, or rather recording, almost zero tourism visit recently. Arrivals at the country stood at about 2.02 million in 2018, but saw a growth by 3.9% to 2.5 million back in 2019. Now we are joined at the studio by a gentleman, commentator. He said he is a commentator, Yongam. Yamgela. Spengan. I'm actually now mixing his surname with, and in my head I was actually thinking of Yanga, the Idols girl, because I was thinking the name was actually related. But nonetheless, we really appreciate Yamgela on Galaxy Universal Network. Thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, we are talking about the taxi industry today, and that a lot of people are kind of confused on what's happening. We see that you have done quite a proper analysis of what is happening in the taxi industry. First and foremost, would you just introduce yourself to our viewers at home, and also tell us exactly your analysis of the current situation with the taxis?
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, and good morning to the viewers at home. My name is Yamgela Spenga, and I'm a researcher and a social commentator. And the research basically on the taxi industry is around people not quite understanding where the taxi industry comes from, or why the situation that is prevailing in the taxi industry is where it is. And I thought to give a background of where the situation comes from and why we are where we are today, by being able to draw back from the formation of the taxi industry during the apartheid era its illegal period, how it became a legalized industry, to it not actually receiving the support that it was meant to receive from government from the onset of our democracy, and landing up with an unregulated industry that commutes about 75% of the workforce. So anyone who's going to work, school or university, wherever in the country, is likely using, 3 out of 4 people will be using a taxi, but it's still not part of the greater transportation framework of the country as per the regulation, and it's basically hawkers who just go into cars. There's no training, there's no support and so forth. And so we're saying that, as we've seen that there's this big national strike that has been called by the 2 national unions in Santaco and NTBA, let's sit down and understand where it's coming from, so that we can be able to draw clearer perspectives and opinions around what the taxi industry strike is about and what they are actually fighting for, because it also relates to broader issues of economic empowerment that we've been speaking about in political and socio-economic circles since the dawn of democracy, to say, how do we bring black people into the fold of economic participation in relation to where they were in the past apartheid regime and colonialism. And that's basically in a nutshell what the research was trying to tap into.
But Yamkela, right, I just want to specifically, focus on the funding, the 1.3 billion that was 1.35 billion that was offered to the taxi industry, and then the taxi owners rejected that. And we saw that on your Facebook page, you actually posted on the issue about why the taxi industry rejected that 1.35 billion. Can you take us through that, because it seems like you are more on the side of taxi owners compared to the funding that was given to the taxi owners.
Okay, so the context here, Palisa, is that we had an issue of the lockdown. No one planned for the lockdown. At 3 months, so for the first about 35 days or so, no one was going to work except for the very essential services. Operating hours for taxis was in the morning from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then later on in the evening from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. So taxis were given, say, you are only going to carry essential workers at 50% capacity, and you are not going to be able to operate outside these hours. Only essential workers are going to. So for the first 35 days or so, then incrementally other industries were brought to the fold, but the taxis were still told you are only going to go up to a maximum of 70% capacity. And so because of this 3-month downturn of the economy, the taxi industries have not been generating the revenue that they are meant to generate that keeps them afloat. But now a lot of the taxis are bonded to financialization that they've received through this recapitalization scheme, where SA Taxi, that is owned by Transaction Capital, finances these taxis in the majority. And when you work out that, on the post I put one of the slides that comes from the 2018 financial report of Transaction Capital, and they show that the average taxi pays an installment of 15,000 Rand a month in this in this financial financing of the taxi, which works out to just over 1 million Rand, close to 1.1 million Rand over a period of 72 months. And that's what taxis do. And when you look at the business that they've been going through, it means a lot of the taxis were not able to pay that amount of money on the revenue that has been generated through this lockdown period. It has simply not been enough. And so going there to the government to appeal, say we are seriously behind. 3 months, you multiply that by 15,000, you're looking at close to 45,000 Rand. And they're saying, if you want to assist us, please, then we're appealing to you. We've never come to the government for assistance ever before. At least assist each and every taxi with 20,000 Rand to make up for the revenue loss, so that we can continue our operations as smoothly as possible as COVID-19 persists, because you still require of us to have 70% capacity, not full capacity. And it simply means that the passengers we are not going to be able to be carried as efficiently, and also there are less people working. A lot of people are no longer going to work, so we don't have as many people in our revenue pool as we had before. And the Ministry of Transport offered them 1.35 billion, and they said, look, but this money, if you break it down, it essentially boils down to about 4,000 to 5,000 rand a taxi. But this on a normal month or on a normal week without COVID-19 is the revenue that we make in just under 10 days, and it's not even enough to cover our installments.
Let me ask, maybe if I could just chip in into what you're saying so that I'm not left behind. You're mentioning the issue of them not being able to pay their installments. Of course, the government has intervened when it's come to that, to speak to, like maybe banks to say, listen, give people a payment holiday. This is what was arranged, to say people must get payment holiday. This means that those taxi drivers also, they obviously part of those banks where the banks are financing these, to say they will have a 3 months or 6 months payment holiday. So they is to say that their payments will now be extended by that third period. So what happened?
So, like I said, that the banks were given a mandate, but Transaction Capital is not a bank. So this institution that finances the bulk majority of taxis on the road is not a bank. Secondly, here's the other caveat, is that taxis are logistic vehicles. So they have high mileage, high consumption of parts that a normal vehicle that drives from A to B wouldn't have. And as such, they have higher maintenance that is required on them to keep them efficient and running on the road. A taxi won't go at 15,000, 30,000 kilometer intervals to service, because they consume those kilometers very quickly. An average taxi on the road spends 8,000 kilometers in a month. They consume that in a month. An average car will take more than 6 months to consume that kind of mileage. So they are high. So the revenue, people see the revenue that goes in, but they don't say what gets spent maintaining and running this vehicle, as opposed to what the owner gets. And you find that the average owner of a taxi, paid taxi, and there's another misconception that there's these taxi lords who own multitude of taxis. But research that was done even by Transaction Capital said the average owner has 1.2 taxis. So not even 2 taxis, the average owner in the taxi industry. So if you spread all the taxis by the owners, you find that there's 1.2 taxis per owner. So there might be outliers who have 15 taxis or 10 taxis or 5 taxis, but those are not the norm. They are an exception. They are the outliers in the pool of what taxi owners are. So the average person is going to extract about 5 to 10,000 from a taxi, depending on the route, because routes in urban areas are not going to be the same as routes in rural areas. People working and population and so forth are not going to be the same. So if you're looking at an urban area taxi, the average is hovering around 7,000 to 9,000 per taxi. So it's a normal working class salary. Like someone who goes to work and actually earns a salary after doing all the obligations that they need to do to keep this taxi fit for carrying passengers. And that's the misconception I think we are also having as a country, understanding how the business operates.
So how about maybe we start a conversation whereby we say that the body that controls the taxi ownership, you said that the taxis do not owe their taxes to the banks, but rather a specific body actually have forgotten the name of the Transaction Capital. So how about that maybe the taxi association then hold a conversation with government to say, government, hold these guys liable as well, so that they give them directives that they need to now extend our payment leave instead of wanting this money from government, because so many other people will come up and say, government, we are also affected in a similar way, but we are not getting, like for an example, a person who earns between 20 and 30,000 rand per month, government has only given them 6,000 rand for them as a subsidy for their salaries to survive. You can see that that person cannot survive if you were having bills that were covering 30,000 and now you are only receiving 6,000. So it's not only the taxi association that is suffering in this thing, everybody else is suffering. Don't you think that the taxi industry, they are being a little bit selfish?
Not even. Look, the taxi industry is an industry. So you are not looking at individuals. You are looking at an industry that commutes 75% of all working class people. That means the economy is bedrocked upon a functioning taxi industry. So when you are bailing out the taxi industry, it's as good as not saying, why are we paying 5 billion to SAA when we can spread 5, we are suffering here. But SAA is an industry that is aligned to the country's greater transportation objectives. So when we are bailing out SAA, we are not bailing out pilots, or we are not bailing out specific people who are above anyone else. But the country is making a conscious economic decision to say we have an industry that is very important to our survival, that is very important to the greater economic infrastructure that we have. Because if 75% of the workforce doesn't get to work tomorrow, every other sector of the economy will be affected drastically. It means we will be on the brink of economic collapse. So to have a smooth functioning economy, we are saving this industry, not because we are trying to enrich taxi owners. No, we are not trying to enrich, but we are making sure that our integrated transportation framework works in favor of the economy. And it doesn't do that if you are having a big component of what your transportation framework is not functioning. If people are not getting to work, they're not being productive, nurses are not getting to hospitals and all of that, then you have like a systemic collapse as a result of not looking at this as an industry. And we are also saying the government has been supporting other components of the transportation industry. Buses are subsidized, trains are subsidized. We pay billions per annum to Gautrain alone.
Is it not maybe because the reason why the buses are being subsidized is because they belong to the government?
Not necessarily. Patco Bus is a listed company. It's been listed since 1945. It's a private company, entirely on the JSE, private ownership, but the government subsidizes Patco Bus. It's the biggest metropolitan bus carrier that is not owned by the state in the country. It's subsidized, and it benefits from a subsidy policy that exists within the transportation framework that taxis are not able to tap into because the government has failed to create a regulatory framework for the industry. And so if we are going to be saying that we are subsidizing we are paying billions as it is to Gautrain and the Gautrain buses, which the government owns 45% of. If we as public taxpayers are subsidizing institutions like the Gautrain, we are subsidizing institutions like SAA, which 95% of the country has never been on an SAA plane, but we pay money every 2 years. But everyone
pay taxes. Do they pay for taxes? Because they don't pay taxes, right?
So here's another thing that's important to understand. If you're saying taxes, you are speaking to a broad thing. So you can say income tax or pay as you earn or whatever. Then you are but VAT, fuel tax, and all of these others are also taxes as well that the taxi industry pays. And the reason why they don't have a framework for pay as you earn is not because the taxi industry doesn't want to pay taxes. When you go and you register for a permit, a license to operate, it's attached to your tax number. So SARS, as it is, understands which taxi belongs to which owner. It's attached to your tax number. So, and every operating permit is attached to an owner's taxation number. And they have a tax profile. They just have not created a framework of taxation.
So this obviously confirms that the taxes do not pay the pay as you earn. So they do not contribute to the society. So they should not be expecting government to actually bail them out because they are not contributing effectively into the economy of South Africa. They are obviously assisting in terms of transporting of the workers to and from work. And also, I wanted to check with you also something. You mentioned something about, buses being subsidized by government and whatsoever. But I've seen a lot of taxi drivers fighting when government is introducing new ways of commuting. New ways of commuting, like in terms of, creating buses in Ria Vaya. It caused a lot of drama. People died during the Ria Vaya because taxis were not agreeing to that government need to, better our transportation system. A large number of people die on our roads due to our unroady roads that are being put onto place. The taxi industry themselves, as they self-regulate themselves, what is it that they do in order to first control their own business, because of course they are not controlled by government, and then two, making sure then that they do pay, as you're saying, some pay the tax and some don't. Those who pay, they pay under whose grounds, and those who do not pay, why are they not paying?
So, number one, taxation is the responsibility of government. You can't expect taxis to now sit and create a taxation regime for themselves. And how is it calculated? How do you, if you have not, so everyone is given a tax bracket based on a specific calculation that is done by tax specialists. Taxi bosses are not tax specialists. They can't create a regime that is going to work for their own taxation. No, let me answer it in this way.
Yeah.
The reason why they can't do that is the same way that our government has failed to understand that there are innovative ways of making income. For instance, someone who's a hawker, who earns 30,000 rand selling scop at the side of the road. The government considers them as unemployed because they have not come up with a tax regime to say someone doesn't necessarily have to go to an 8 to 5 to make income. And that's not the fault of the person who's selling scop and not being taxed, because he's selling scop, he knows how to sell scop, he's not a tax specialist. Can't say, no, I've made this return on investment and whatnot, and these are not, they are not.
Let me get you guys here. Sorry. We must compare oranges with oranges, okay? Because the manner in which right now we are comparing somebody who's selling scop there, those two businesses, like the taxi industry, it's not a small business. It's the biggest business in South Africa, as you said even earlier. It is commuting and transporting 75% of South African workforce. So we cannot take that business for granted. We cannot say it is small. We cannot compare it with a person selling scop on the side of the road, because this is big business for the country. It must be regulated. It must be put under the brackets of the South African contributing economy, and they are not.
And they are, and they are the biggest consumers of fuel. That means they pay more tax levies under fuel than anyone else. VAT on their parts. Every other thing that they do contributes to the economy. And we cannot say because the government has failed to create a framework for taxation that now the blame. And also, you are looking at it from an industry perspective, but you also have to understand that it's individuals. Ubabum Tetwa has a taxi. He wakes up in the morning, gets into his taxi. No, I'm saying, you as an industry, they have a bulk. It's an industry, but it's made up of individuals. So Edcon might be the size of the taxi industry or scale up, but Edcon is an integrated company that has financials of all its stores. It knows everything that goes inside and outside. But there's no one who goes to Babum Tetwa's house every evening and say, no, here are your books, here's your expense, this is what you've done. If Babum Tetwa goes there and decides, hey, eating tenge, eat 2 pias, no one accounts to say, hey, you've spent company money. And that cannot fall in the tech. Number one, when you are going to see people as economic assets, you train them. There's something called the TETA in this country, the transportation.
Do they want to be part of South African economic, regulated?
Do they want to be part?
Because all the ministers of transport, Yanga, they've been, Yamgela, they've always been fighting with the taxi industry to say taxi industry, they do not want to fall under the government. They want to, Babum Tetwa, you are mentioning, Babum Tetwa wants to continue own his own taxis. I have my uncle who is actually a taxi owner. He will always, Babum Ngani says, no. I don't want my business to be, a part of this government thing. I want to be running my own thing. It has always been like that. You don't want to be part of government. You don't want to be regulated by government.
But being part of government is not taking away ownership. And it's it's the responsibility of government to come up with frameworks and they impose. The government writes laws. That's their responsibility. if they write a law, they pass it and it's a bill, people are forced to comply.
But you guys
if
don't comply.
you know, if you know that, no, you can't say people don't comply to laws that don't exist. If there was a law and they're saying you are flouting a law, now they can, the government can say you are transgressing, and they can actually put penalties in place.
Yeah, let us make a simple example, Yamgela. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, the Taxi Association boss said that the taxis must go to the road and take long distances. They must load full to capacity. Is that not transgressing?
No, but he's saying in protest, because we've negotiated, and another, no, it's in protest. If I have come to the government and I've pleaded, I say, look, I need your assistance here. This is what I'm bringing to the table. You make a plan, because I'm also helping you here. Help me help you as well. Continue being able to help you. And you say, no, I can't help you. Then I'm like, okay, then I have to look out for myself, because you are not helping me help the situation. I must look out for myself. The same way if teachers are going there.
And, you know, Sisanda, unfortunately, you know, we don't have enough time, but then definitely for sure we are going to be inviting Yamgela back in the studio to discuss this further. For now, we are going to be taking a short break, because it is time for the one and only Ubab Mateza with the Galaxy Sports. For now, stay tuned, don't go away. Definitely you are coming back to the studio, Yamgela, earlier this time.
No, yeah.
So let's take a very short break. We will be with you in a short.
The power to defeat coronavirus is in our hands. Play your part by following these 5 basic precautions. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water or sanitizer for at least 20 seconds. Maintain a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters from people around you. Wear a cloth mask at all times when in public. Always cough or sneeze into your elbow or tissue. If you're an employer, screen your employees daily for symptoms of COVID-19, and where appropriate, refer for testing. Working together, we can beat the coronavirus. A message from government.
Challenge your ordinary. Experience the extraordinary.
Not only the government, the municipality here has had no plan.
Now, I believe that my peace is my most valuable asset.
Absolutely beautiful!
This is exactly what I was looking for.
DJ Khaled!
It is a day to celebrate.
We're ready for action. I like it when it's nice and soft. Yeah, that is nice.
How was it like growing up in Nigeria? Yes, sir, you know what it is.
Feeling is there that, you know, you're doing something special.
Stop being so dramatic, Mira.
You should just be what you want to be.
Experience the extraordinary with StarSat. Experience the extraordinary.
I like you, girl, in particular. Yeah, you got that young.
Challenge your ordinary. Experience the extraordinary with StarSat.
You're still with us right on the Pan-African Morning News, and yes, we promised to bring you more and more guests, but today we've got the one and only Ubabdumile Mateza with Galaxy Sports. For now, Ubabdumile, welcome to Pan-African Morning News. I wasn't going to do that, but the way you looked at me, I was like, I have to give you that.
Sounds so much like the late Hugh Masegela's trumpet.
Oh, all right.
Well, as sport today, we bring you the African Nations Cup, which was scheduled for January 2021 from the 9th to the 6th of February in 2021 has been cancelled. It's now going to be held in 2022, but still in Cameroon.
Pushing it.
It means in 20, yes, they are pushing it. It means in 2022, African countries will have to play in 2 major international tournaments. The African Nations Cup, which now is going to take place in Cameroon, and the World Cup in Qatar in 2022.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Do you know I have flights to Cameroon? Oh no. Really?
Yeah.
So we're still leaving our flights, of course, because we believe that it's still early. They cannot cancel something for February next year.
Well, yeah, it is early. I was surprised that they actually, I am in the process of negotiating for the African Nations Cup with a proposed sponsor and television coverage, but unfortunately now we'll have to talk about 2022.
Yeah, okay.
The other thing is another international body is threatened by the United States with a withdrawal of funds or not paying funds towards that body. The United States is threatening the World Anti-Doping Agency with retaining their funds and not pay them over if the world body of anti-doping does not implement governance in its operations. And the world governing body, which is WADA, that looks at athletes who are using drugs and doping, says it's all a misconception and a misunderstanding. There is nothing of the sort. The other thing that is happening in sport is COVID-19 has done it again. You remember the whistle in football, the whistle in rugby, the whistle in everything?
Oh, yes,
the whistle is going out. They're coming in with an electronic whistle where the referee is going to press a button and the whistle will go off. No, because what they say, if you put the whistle in your mouth and blow, a whole lot of these germs come out that have to do with COVID-19.
Were they sharing the whistle before?
No, they are not sharing the whistle. You remember at times, the referee is very close to players when he blows the whistle. I don't know, I was suggesting in a discussion with Dr. Ngwenya, the Chief Medical Officer of SAFA, I was suggesting social distancing in football. The referee can be used to implement, to say, no, you are too close to this one, stand there.
But how do you mark the ball? I could play football myself. I'll score as many goals as possible.
Tested before, they start.
Well, everybody will be tested. Everybody who goes into the stadium, including commentators, will be tested, including journalists will be tested. And those who test positive will not be allowed to enter the stadium.
Oh, okay. Wow.
The other story is canoeing is also now coming back. You remember the Duzi Canoe Marathon down in Durban?
Yes,
The Umgeni River.
Yes.
It's coming back. They are going to start training. They are going to start preparing for the Duzi Canoe Marathon. There are 3 marathons that are very important to South Africans in the canoe world. One is the Berg River Canoe Marathon, which is held in the Western Cape, and the other is the Fish River Canoe Marathon, which is held in the Eastern Cape. And the famous one is the Umsunduzi Canoe Marathon down in Durban.
You also call it a doozy?
Yeah. Well, that's what it's called. I reminded you that it's Umsunduzi.
Because I didn't know what you're talking about if you say
well, when I said doozy.
Yeah, and then George Maluleke.
Well, George Maluleke, one of the things, I'm actually surprised by this George Maluleke story, because Kaizer Chiefs, according to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, cannot sign any player until that case is heard, that the DICE case is heard.
And not international, probably, maybe there is
No, they are not supposed to sign any player until that case is heard in September.
So for them selling George Maluleke to Sundowns?
Oh yes, if they are selling, they can sell George Maluleke.
Oh yeah, no, they sold George to Mamelodi Sundowns.
They can, and George still has a lot of football in him. I'm actually surprised. George has a lot of football in him, and I think what Pitso has seen something in George Maluleke. He's going to use him in a different way, and he's going to have players work around him. He's very strong, he's a very strong player, and he still has a lot of football in him.
So we basically basically, I saw a lot of people commenting, Balisa, on social media saying that now since George Maluleke, his whole life has been with Kaizer Chiefs. So now when he, his professional successful life has been with Kaizer Chiefs. Now when he plays against Sundowns, for Sundowns against Kaizer Chiefs, they must just send Katsande specially for him to manage him.
Well, there was something in South African football where a player who plays for Kaizer Chiefs could not play for Orlando Pirates until Max Maponyane left Kaizer Chiefs, went to join Orlando Pirates.
Because before football was more like a it was more emotional. You would never find, it was like serious, like political parties. You would never find at the stadium, you find Kaizer Chiefs supporters sitting with the so in our days, it's fun now. We sit together. It was like a real rivalry thingy. I know that back in France, there's a Nîmes and Montpellier type of, those two teams, you are not even allowed to walk in that city wearing a jersey of another. If they see you wearing, you get like the real beating. I'm not talking about, it's insane. It's insane. It's insane. It's
like
insane.
In France, I thought it's a South African thing, but things do happen.
Yeah. No, they do. Thank you so much, Mr. Mateza. Definitely looking forward to at 10 o'clock for more stories from that.
We have a lot of golfers coming in this weekend to talk about golf, professional golfers. We also have a young man, Jimmy Hedbush, Mark Hedbush's son, who's now been employed, whose company has been employed by the PGA to run the PGA Championship.
Oh, I actually know Hedbush's daughter.
You know the Hedbushes. You know people in high places, huh? Yeah. You're just throwing names.
Yes, yes.
You're just throwing names.
Oh, no, it's me, come on.
But otherwise, thank you so much, Bab Mateza.
Yes,
so we've come to the end of our show now, 5 minutes
definitely.
too. So let us give you the headlines, Sanda.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just run through to the headlines. 128 more people have died in South Africa after contracting the coronavirus, bringing the total number of dead people to 2,657. And Professor Mary Ann Davis from the Department of Health in the Western Cape urged people living with HIV and AIDS as well as TB to take extra precautions in order to reduce the chance of being infected by COVID-19. And Defence Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula faced difficult questions yesterday from members of the national provinces as well. And the Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula told scores of journalists that he was impressed with the overall state of readiness from PRASA. And judgment has been reserved in the appeal case between South African Airways and Business Rescue practitioners and 3 workers' unions, as well as when we go into Hong Kong. Leader Carrie Lam told the main UN Human Rights Commission forum on Tuesday that China's national security legislation for Hong Kong would fill a gaping hole and would not undermine its autonomy. And also we did look into stories in Kenya, of course, the story of tourism, as well as the story with, the insect that have been, destroying our African heritage and our plants out there. So these are the stories that we had for you, and we appreciate that you were with us for the past 3 hours. And please do not forget that exactly at 9:30, Violeta Mukwelo is bringing us Morning Express. At 10 o'clock, Mr. Mateza will be right here bringing us Galaxy Sports, and exactly at 11 o'clock, Sisanda Nomosaga Kabekuto will give you Zulu News because Petrom Sweli is not around for today. So I will be handling that department. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
And again, from our guest.
We're going on. And then exactly at 12 o'clock, Palisa will be with Orodesang giving you Galaxy Midday Express. And soon after that, there is a social trend with Zola Gasholana, and lately joined by Katleho. I've been seeing that. It's going quite very well. And then later on, we've got Swahili and Xhosa News taking place at 3 o'clock. And And then immediately after that, we are going to be having Audrey Chimwanda giving us Galaxy Prime, looking at other parts of Africa, focusing in our African continent, seeing what's happening in the country, in the continent as a whole. And please do not forget that today is Wednesday. So this means that Sankofa is in a place with Bishop J. Maponga III giving us Sankofa right there at 8 o'clock. Please do not go away because we are still right here. Yes. Palisa, you were saying?
Oh, I was saying thank you so much again, from our guest, Uyamgela Spengana, with all the information and, giving us insight about what's happening, the crisis that being faced with, the taxi industry crisis.
Yes. So far, so good. We appreciate your time, and this is all that we had for you today, and we hope that you are going to join us again tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on Pan-African Morning on Galaxy Universal Network, channel 500. Igama lami ke ngosisandwe Musa kwaQabe waKhuthoyi, intombazane yaphansi kwamhlabi yalingana umfule ngophuza ngiphuzukelekele inkomo zakithi ngayishiya zidla phansi emahlathini asekubandeni kwesikwazibi isigodi phansi kwesikamabandleni ngifike ngagaleleka ngatheleka khona la isidudla samampela sengiyahamba. Palisa?
From me, Palisa Muchiminyane, ngithi mina ayona ngisisidudla samampela, but otherwise ngisilenda sangempela umkhonto duma njengetulu umnyango valo vala ngamakhanza amadzodza ngithi ngiyabonga nina bomnyamato bongwani nina bakathwala naye ke ingane yenu uPalisa bamatheza.
Well, kuthi sonke ndingathi qoqa nqwelo yogoduko iqa kuthiwa ngane
Bye.